Could Ivan Milat, the notorious backpacker murderer, have been responsible for more heinous acts than the 7 backpacker murders for which he was convicted? This unsettling question looms large as we explore the shadowy field of additional investigations that implicated Milat as a person of interest in a series of disturbing cases. Before we continue with this story, don't forget to give a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Without further ado, let's get started. Early life. Ivan Milat, born in 1944 in New South Wales, grew up in a tumultuous household, displaying early signs of violence and crime. His criminal history began with theft, escalating to armed robbery and even an abduction where he raped one of the victims. Despite several encounters with the law, legal maneuvering and acquittals allowed him to escape justice. He led a double life, working as a truck driver for 2 decades while harboring his darkest desires, including attempted rape and murder. His story is a chilling journey through a troubled life that culminated in a gruesome killing spree in the Balangloo State Forest, forever staining his name as one of Australia's most infamous serial killers. Personal life. Ivan Milat's personal life was troubled, marked by a marriage that ended due to domestic violence. His great-nephew, Matthew Milat, and a friend, Cohen Clean, were sentenced to prison for the brutal murder of David Octoloni in 2010. Milat's former lawyer made a deathbed statement in 2005 implicating his sister in the killings of 2 British backpackers. In 2015, it was revealed that Milat had admitted to accidentally shooting a taxi driver in 1962, paralyzing the victim, but he was never charged. Authorities noted similarities between this crime and Milat's modus operandi in the backpacker murders. In the Balangloo State Forest case, several backpackers had gone missing in the late 1980s and early 1990s. This included the disappearance of Deborah Everest and James Gibson, a young Victorian couple, Simone Schmidt from Germany, and British backpackers Carolyn Clark and Joanne Walters. The first breakthrough came in September 1992 when 2 runners stumbled upon concealed corpses in the forest. Clark and Walters were identified, with Walters having been brutally stabbed multiple times, while Clark appeared to have been used for target practice. Further searches in the forest revealed the remains of Everest and Gibson in 1993. Gibson had been stabbed and paralyzed, while Everest had suffered severe beatings and stabbing. In November 1993, the remains of Simone Schmidt were found, bearing numerous stab wounds. Clothing at the scene matched that of another missing backpacker, Anja Habschied. Habschied and her partner, Gabor Neugebauer, were discovered in shallow graves nearby, with Habschied decapitated and Neugebauer shot multiple times. The discovery of these gruesome crimes led to the formation of Task Force in October 1993, and a substantial reward was offered for information. Lake analysis technology was used to narrow down the list of suspects, and speculation rose that multiple killers might be involved due to the differing methods and burial sites. A crucial breakthrough came when Paul Onions, a backpacker who had narrowly escaped an attack in the same area in 1990, contacted the police in the UK. He described his encounter with a man known as Bill who had attempted to rob him at gunpoint near Balangloo. Onion's testimony, along with corroborating accounts from witnesses, led to a significant development in the case: arrest and trial. In 1994, police initiated surveillance of Ivan Milat's residence in Eagleville due to suspicious activities, including the sale of his vehicle and the obsession with weapons. The connection between the Balangloo murders and Paul Onion's experience led to Onions positively identifying Milat as his assailant in Australia. Milat was arrested in May 1994 on robbery and weapons charges related to the attack on Onions. A search of his house uncovered various weapons and items belonging to several of the victims. Milat was later charged with the 7 backpacker murders in May 1994. His trial began in March 1996 and was prosecuted by Mark Tedeschi. Milat maintained his innocence and argued that there was no concrete evidence of his guilt, attempting to shift blame to other family members, especially Richard Milat. After 18 weeks of testimony, the jury found Ivan Milat guilty of the murders in July 1996. He received multiple life sentences without the possibility of parole for the murders, and additional sentences for the attack on Onions. Victims. In 1989, Deborah Everest and James Gibson, both 19-year-old Australians, embarked on a journey from Melbourne. They initially visited Sydney, staying in a city hostel before heading to Confest, where they planned to hitchhike to Albury. However, their trail went cold and a bushwalker discovered Gibson's camera near Galston Gorge in northern Sydney a day after they were last seen. Their disappearance remained a mystery until their bodies were found in Belanglo State Forest on October 5, 1993, revealing that both had been brutally stabbed. In 1991, 20-year-old German traveler Simone Schmid set out from Sydney, intending to hitchhike to Melbourne to meet her mother for a camping holiday. She was last spotted at a train station in Western Sydney, preparing to hitchhike. Tragically, her life ended with numerous stab wounds, including one to her spinal column, as her body was discovered on November 1, 1993 in Belanglo State Forest. In December 1991, German backpackers Gabor Neugebauer, 21, and Anja Habschied, 20, left a hostel in King's Cross, Sydney, with plans to hitchhike to Adelaide and Darwin. On November 4, 1993, their lifeless bodies were found in Belanglo State Forest. Neugebauer had been bound and shot 6 times, while Habschied had been brutally beheaded. In 1992, British citizens Joanne Walters, 22, and Carolyn Clark, 21, set off from King's Cross with the aim of hitchhiking around Australia. They were en route to Victoria for fruit-picking work and made it to the Bully Pass near Wollongong, where they asked for directions to the Hume Highway. Unfortunately, their journey took a tragic turn, and on September 19, 1992, their bodies were discovered in Belanglo State Forest. Walters had been stabbed, while Clark had been subjected to horrifying 10 gunshot wounds. Custody and appeals. During his custody, Ivan Milat faced a series of challenges and legal proceedings. Shortly after his arrival at Maitland Jail, he was assaulted by another inmate. In a failed escape attempt in May 1997, he partnered with a convicted drug dealer, George Savas, who was later found dead in his cell. Milat was transferred to the maximum security section at Goulburn Correctional Center following the escape attempt. He made several legal appeals against his convictions, citing a breach to his right to legal representation. Despite his efforts, these appeals were repeatedly dismissed in various courts, including the New South Wales Court of Criminal Appeal and the High Court of Australia. In 2001, Milat was moved to the High Risk Management Correction Center, Supermax, at Goulburn Correctional Center, which sparked public controversy when he received a certain amenities like a toaster and television. However, his legal appeals remained unsuccessful, and he continued serving his life sentences for the backpacker murders. Additional investigations. Ivan Milat, known as the backpacker murderer, was under suspicion for involvement in several other cases, raising concerns that he may have committed more crimes than the 7 backpacker murders for which he was convicted. Here are some of the cases where he was considered a person of interest. Karen Rowland, 1971. Karen Rowland and her sister were traveling to a motel in Canberra, but she never arrived. Her abandoned car was discovered in an underdeveloped area, and her bones were found the next day. Milat allegedly boasted about murdering someone and burying the body in the same area. Peter Letcher, 1988. Peter Letcher went missing while hitchhiking to his parents' house. His body was found with handcuff marks, gunshot wounds, and signs of possible sexual assault. Milat had taken his wife to the area where Letcher's body was discovered. Diane Pinacchio, 1991. Diane Pinacchio disappeared after leaving a motel and was found in a similar manner to other Milat victims with signs of sexual assault. Her murder occurred during the same time frame as the other backpacker murders. In addition to these cases, Milat was also considered in the investigations of several other disappearances and murders, including those of Leanne Goodall, Robin Hickey, Amanda Robinson, and others. While Milat's potential involvement was examined, conclusive evidence linking him to these cases was not found. However, suspicions remain that he may have been responsible for more crimes than the ones he was convicted of. Final years and death. In the years leading up to his death, Ivan Milat made several disturbing and desperate attempts to manipulate the legal system. He denied any involvement of his family in the murders during a 2004 interview. In 2009, he tried to force an appeal by cutting off his little finger and intended to send it to the High Court of Australia. But this attempt was unsuccessful. Milat had a history of self-harm, including swallowing razor blades and metal objects in 2001. In 2011, he went on a hunger strike to request a PlayStation, but was unsuccessful. In May 2019, Milat was diagnosed with terminal esophageal cancer and transferred to the Prince of Wales Hospital. He was then moved to the Long Bay Correctional Center for his remaining time. Despite his deteriorating health, he did not confess to the backpacker murders, despite repeated attempts by the police to elicit a confession. On October 27, 2019, Ivan Milat passed away from the esophagus and stomach cancer at the age of 74. He requested the New South Wales government to pay for his funeral, but this request was denied. Instead, the costs were covered by his prison account. Throughout his final days, the police attempted to extract a confession from him, but he never officially admitted to the crimes. In the haunting tale of Ivan Milat, the infamous backpacker murderer, we are confronted with disturbing possibilities that extend beyond the 7 backpacker murders he was convicted of. While additional investigations implicated him as a person of interest in several other cases, conclusive evidence linking him to these crimes remained elusive. Milat's sinister legacy, marked by violence and death, persisted until his final days, when he succumbed to terminal cancer. Despite persistent efforts by law enforcement, he departed without officially confessing to the crimes, leaving behind a dark cloud of unanswered questions surrounding his true scope of malevolence. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and ring the bell for future content. Thanks for watching.